Scrutiny panel for environment, communities and partnerships. We'll kick off with apologies. I think we've got full quota, haven't we?
Yes. Yeah.
No apologies at all. So starting with agenda item 1, the minutes. Is everyone happy for the last December minutes to be signed off? I think I'm Okay, item 2, members' interests. Has anyone got any interests on any of the forthcoming items? Councillor Shaw.
I work for the Environment Agency Waste Team. I don't think there's any conflict of interest, but obviously just regarding the weekly food collections, I just thought it was worth mentioning.
And Councillor McAdam.
Yeah, I'm involved with the setting up of a new charity shop, which is claiming business rate reduction. Thank you.
Any others? Oh, Councillor Mockbull.
I'm not sure if I need to declare an interest, but it's just I have a family business in town, so just thought I'd transparency reasons.
Thank you. Any others? Great, we'll move on to item 3, this working programme. Has everyone had a chance to read the email that came round circulating the new ideas as well? If anyone wants to discuss the part 2 items, we'll have to do it in a closed session, but we're open to discuss anything. But if you do want to be in the closed part 2 items, can you just let me know it's a part 2 item so it's not discussed in this open forum? So anyone got any questions or comments about the working programme? Councillor Hunt.
Sorry, I just want to flag on what's come round. There's a few items that are linked into what members have raised previously, including the Garden Waste Incentive Scheme is set to come forward in March, which is something that I know has been raised by a few different members. As for the work planning session that happened previously, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that those items have now been written up. They've gone to the corporate directors to have a look through, and myself and Julia will hopefully get that list back next week once the directors have taken a look.
Any other questions or comments on the working programme? Yes.
So obviously the items that you have on the agenda forward plan on page 8 of the agenda pack are what is proposed to come through to this panel on the agendas. If anybody has any strong feelings that any of those should not be on the agendas, which would obviously you have expressed a desire not to see quite as much pre-decision scrutiny, obviously if you can flag that now, then we can see if any of those need to come off to allow more space for some of the other projects to come through. But if you're happy with those items that are on there, then obviously they can stay on there. And that doesn't have to be, you know, obviously next month we can adjust for, say, the forward ones again, but obviously you've got up what we have now for the next couple of months.
Councillor Hassel.
Yeah, I think we need to see, you know, the full list, and then we can actually decide. So, you know, potentially, I still haven't really got my head around in terms of, you know, whether, from my perspective anyway, that all these things should or shouldn't be there until we know what potentially could replace them.
Thank you. Before we move on, we've agreed to grow our climate working group from 4 members to 6 members. So can anyone who's an interest in being in the working group send an email through to Becky to let her know your interest, because we need to get a balance of the different representation. Councillor Shaw?
Can I just check? I'm interested in remaining in the group. Do you want an email to confirm as well?
Would you do that? And could you do that as well, Councillor Lowe? Thank you so much. And Councillor Auburn. Thank you. So moving on, any other, before we move on, has anyone got any other comments they want to make about our working programme? Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 4, the business rates, discretionary rate relief policy. And we've got Councillor Ferguson and Zoe.
Thank you, Chair. So I think this is the third time that Zoe and I have
presented updates to our discretionary rates relief policy. First couple of times are more fundamental changes, and I think what we've got is a very readable document. Unfortunately, governments make legislative changes, and so we've had to update this, especially in respect to Section 10, which is the retail, hospitality and leisure relief. Government has reduced the amount of relief that those businesses can claim down from, I think, 75%, was it, Zoe, down to 40%? And so we have to reflect that change in our policy. We've also taken the opportunity to clarify Section 44A. It's not really a change of policy. It's just making our position clearer so that any business owner who is reading this policy will understand exactly what they're entitled to. So I think that's mainly for a clarification purpose, but those are the two main changes to this policy. And if you have any questions, Zoe, would you like to say anything? Or
I'll also add, you'll see that there is a part to the recommendation that any future changes, whether it be as a result of government direction or minor wording changes, would go for through the Section 151 officer in consultation with the Executive Councillor for Resident Services and Corporate Performance. So it wouldn't necessarily go through the full overview and scrutiny process. And this is because obviously it is a government directive and it is just a minor wording change. So, but happy to take any questions if anybody's got any.
Has anyone got any questions or comments? Councillor Shaw.
Thank you for the report. I must admit, I did get myself in a bit of pickle with the dates, so I just want some clarification if okay. So Appendix 1 is 25-26, so the proposed policy from April, I think it was, or end of March. And the previous one was 23-24. So am I right in thinking that policy was valid for 2 years? Appendix 2, yeah, is 23-24.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. It was, if that is the, I'm sorry if that's the incorrect date that's been placed in there, but it was actually up until the end of this financial year, so 31st of March 2025. So you're agreeing to the new policy from the 1st of April 2025 for the next financial year.
Thank you. And just a slight follow-up question. I was looking at the Appendix 1 on page 35 about the local newspaper relief. It states in there that it ends in 24-25. Is that an error, or is it just seemed a bit odd that that was in there? I'll try and find the exact page.
Sorry, that again should be a typo. That should continue for 25-26. So that would just be amended. I will take that forward.
Thank you. Anyone else got any comments or questions? Councillor McAdam.
Yeah, this 40%, is that absolutely mandatory, or do we have any powers of discretion over that?
as I understand it, and Zoe will clear it, that's the amount of money we can claim back from the government. So if we were not to implement that, it would cost us lots of money and we'd have to budget for it. And I think it could be quite a substantial amount of money, Zoe.
Yeah, the autumn statement, the government did announce that the reduction would be from 75 down to the 40%. Unfortunately, we are doing some work to identify businesses, that's with economic development. So if there are any businesses that are struggling, there are options available to them where they can apply for hardship relief if that is applicable to them.
Thank you. Councillor Hassel.
Yeah, just following on from that. So do we know approximately how much this is going to affect us in terms of, what will affect the businesses concerned? So how much extra revenue they're going to have to pay from going from 70% to 40%? And has anyone done any estimation as to how that's going to impact our market towns?
Yeah, as I say, that is something that we have been looking at. We have identified all the businesses that are claiming the 75 at the moment and what the impact will be going down to the 40%. And it's something that we are actively looking at, contacting businesses concerned
with regards to the potential impact on them. Obviously, it's something that the government did announce in November, which we don't have any control over in terms of the discretionary policy. That is the amount of retail rate relief that we can actually provide to them in terms of the grants that we can actually claim back. But we will be obviously contacting the businesses concerned with regards to what impact is going to potentially be there for them.
Zoe, do you have a number of an idea of how many businesses will be affected?
It's every business that has claimed retail, hospitality and leisure.
So
I can tell you that off the top of my head, I can't tell you exactly how many it is. It is something that we are looking at, but obviously there is going to be an impact, but it will depend. It's not the big businesses that are claiming the retail, because there is a subsidy control there. But we are looking into the impacts that there are for the businesses that.
Thank you.
Unless it's going to be very difficult, Zoe, can we commit to maybe doing that estimate and providing those details to members so we can just understand the impact on those businesses?
Yeah, we'll certainly do that.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned the businesses that might be most affected. Do you find it in your experience, are they proactive at coming forward and saying we might be really badly affected, or is their response really from the outreach that you and the team are doing from here?
Obviously, yes, if they are struggling, they will receive their bills early on in March. With effect for the 15th of April instalments, and they do tend to contact us when they are struggling. We do obviously promote on the web. We do promote we're working with economic development to promote and provide leaflets within our annual billing process of all of the details that are available to them. But yes, if they are struggling, we do normally tend to get quite an influx of people that need to contact us do. And obviously, we actively try to identify as much as possible to help the ratepayers as much as we can.
Has anyone got any other questions or comments on this item? In that case, thank you, Zoe and Councillor Ferguson. So moving on to agenda item 5, the hydrogenated vegetable trial. We have Colin and Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Are you ready?
You're welcome.
Would it be possible, Chair, if I'm allowed to ask members to bring their microphones nearer to them?
Yes.
We were struggling at the back to hear, and I just want it to be clear for anyone watching as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay. So in 2023, we, HDC, launched a pilot project using hydrotreated vegetable oil. So we commonly call it HVO. You say HVO and many people say, what is that? So we use this as an alternative to standard diesel across our vehicle fleet. This initiative is a key part of the Council's climate strategy, aimed at reducing carbon emissions and demonstrating a commitment to sustainability. The trial, conducted in collaboration with our emergency services within our district and in our county, successfully tested HVO's performance across various vehicles. Concluding in June last year, the project showed promising results in reducing our carbon emissions and maintaining operational efficiency. So this has marked a significant step towards the Council's net zero goals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Colin, did you want to add anything?
Well, hello, yeah. I've bought a sample of HVO, that's the clear one, and standard diesel for you to just compare the two if you want to just pass them around. Please don't drink.
You smell it. It's definitely not perfume. Yes. I think we've all read the paperwork and understood the trial and understood how successful it's been. Has anyone got any comments or questions to ask about it? Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. I was really wondering, you were saying that the majority of the HVO is coming from Denmark and I can't remember the other place, but Holland, thank you. Have you considered speaking to local farmers to get it produced locally? I know there are costs involved with changing, obviously, their plant and machinery to deal with it, but I was just wondering what consideration has been put forward for that.
Okay, this is nothing that we've looked at ourselves, but there is no current production in the UK at all, which is sad considering it would make it much better to have it produced locally. But currently Europe is the closest place we can get, Netherlands and Denmark. Yep.
Would it be worth talking to local farmers about it? Because I think if we are going to be going forward with the HVO, it would be ideal if we could get it produced locally. I mean, we've got plenty of farms and farmland around us. It would be, I think, an ideal opportunity to help farmers that are struggling.
Yeah, I'll take that away. I'll speak to Andy about that and we'll come back. That's okay. Yeah.
Councillor Hunt, then Councillor McAdam.
Thank you. There's one thing I want to call out which I think is extremely positive, and that's the cost per tonne of CO2 saved. So the previous HDC project, the report says, comes out at about £8,600 to save a tonne of CO2, whereas this comes out at about just over 300 quid, which is an incredibly efficient cost to carbon saving ratio. And I just wanted to call that out because I think that is extremely good. And I think also linked onto that, pointing out that this falls within the financial envelope of the MTFS, which I think is also really positive as well. The one question I probably have at the minute is one of the recommendations in the report is to endorse continued collaboration with the police and fire, who took part in the trial and it seems were very impressed during it. It's just kind of what might that continued collaboration look like going forward?
We are in continued talks with the fire and police about this, and they are very, very keen for us to get HVO live. We're just trying to keep them at bay for the moment, but they are very, very keen to get HVO live because the trial went so well for them. We geared up, everything just went perfectly. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
So an additional benefit as well of that partnership is potential for other options as well with fire and rescue and police. So things like vehicle maintenance, storage of vehicles, closer working from that partnership has tumbled out of this relationship around fuel as well. So other opportunities may well be presented to work with partners as a consequence. So that kind of unintended consequence is an extra step of value for us. So that partnership will grow, I think, above and beyond just HVO.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Chair. Apart from we've collaborating with the police and the fire service. One emergency service that we haven't collaborated with yet is the East of England Ambulance Service Trust, which I think again would be something that we should maybe pursue to try and get them on board as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor McAdam.
Thank you. Without denying the obvious value in terms of carbon reduction, I'm just curious as to what the relative financial cost is of the fuel. I mean, compared to normal diesel. Thank you.
The cost has varied. In the report, section 5.2, when we started looking at HVO back in December 22, the price differential was 62 pence per litre, which was significantly more expensive. As we stand, the most recent price we got in July 24 is only 18 pence per litre more. But the calculations in this report is based on the higher difference. We cannot guarantee what it will be when we do actually go to buy it, but there are options to hedge and fix the price for 12 to 24 months. But 18 pence is getting better. Yeah.
It's a perfect scenario, isn't it? You can just switch it over. It becomes too expensive. It's brilliant. Councillor Orban.
Thank you, Chair. You'll know from the working group how enthusiastic we've been, and I know Councillor Lowe has banged on about HVOs for longer than before I even knew what they were, and I've had to rein my enthusiasm in just so I don't miss anything. To pick up on the 2 points, which seem to be the two predominant points that have been mentioned, and they're the ones I'd got circulated. So a comment and then a question. In terms of broader cooperation, I'd highlighted the NHS. I'd also thought as well about the county council and the larger town and parish councils who have their own fleets, which might have diesel, Huntingdon being the obvious nearest one because it's in the same town. But also there's the opportunities for cooperation with the Ministry of Defence up at Witton, whether directly or if that's not possible as Huntingdonshire District Council being an exemplar and rolling out our expertise, even if other organisations don't want to work with us. I think there's expertise there to share. The question revolves around the money, and picking up just what Councillor McAdam pointed out. Just so I've got it straight in my head, if we've got a budget of X and the fuel price goes up, do we just swap straight back to normal diesel, or is there a contingency to stick with the more environmentally friendly HVO but spend above? I just want to make sure that we're not going to overspend in the pursuit of the environmental agenda, which I very much support, but I don't want us to trip ourselves up in doing it. So I just want that reassurance. And like I say, I'm holding back my enthusiasm for this just to make sure I've got all my ducks in a row.
I completely understand that point. We do have two options. So one, as I mentioned earlier, we can hedge, which means that when we go into contract, we can fix the price for 12 or 24 months, which means we know exactly what we're going to be paying for that. So there's no fluctuation in the price like there would be on the Platts price index for standard diesel. The alternative is to follow the Platts price index and follow the normal fluctuations with diesel, and just take that risk as we do with diesel. But part of the recommendations of this are to leave the decision up to the section 151. So if the price does start to exceed what we were planning, then we could always revert back to standard diesel. And the beauty of the product is it mixes straight in. So we've got no qualms. We can have one delivery of standard diesel and one delivery of HVO. We could even get 50-50 if we needed to going forward. So we reserve the right to be able to choose what we do, but obviously we've got the green targets to hit. So it's a decision that wouldn't be taken lightly. Is it?
Has a cut-off price been agreed? Has a cut-off price, like when it gets to X amount, we will switch over?
No, that price hasn't yet been agreed,
Okay.
but that's something we can work with finance on that and come back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Hassel.
I'm just wondering whether we ought to make that as a recommendation to the to Cabinet, if it's not there, that they agree a cut-off price. But I firstly like just to congratulate the working group and the team for all their hard effort. This is an excellent piece of work, and it's just what we need right now from a carbon neutrality perspective. I know it doesn't quite get us there, but it's such a big leap. So well done, everyone concerned. I just wanted to refer to paragraph 4.2, which is talking about electric vehicles. And it says the cost of vehicles are anywhere from 80% to 120% greater. So I was just wondering whether you see at some point in the future, with things like blade batteries coming in, which and battery technology cost and efficiency is improving, is whether this is something that we should just do for the rest of the time, or is this a stepping stone to electric vehicles?
HVO is most definitely a stepping stone to future technologies. And yes, the cost of electric is substantially higher. This in 4.2 does refer specifically to RCVs, which is our refuse collection vehicles, which are our biggest cost by far. But it is definitely a stepping stone towards an alternative fuel, whether that be electric or hydrogen. We'll keep our options open at the moment.
Jeff, just come back on that. And when you're comparing, because an electric vehicle is it's the total cost of ownership in terms of the maintenance, the electricity is generally, you can be perfect for refuse to charge overnight, and then all those sort of things. So it's not just the list price comparison of the two vehicles?
No, it's just the list price comparison between the two. Obviously, it is cheaper for electric, and there will be some maintenance savings as well. But the lifetime, currently, electric is still more expensive. It's the capital cost that's referred to in this.
Councillor Criswell.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, obviously find this very interesting. What I don't have a grasp of is what the potential for HVO is. It's using a resource that is being produced as an alternative to other resources. So if we all suddenly started saying we'll use HVO, then presumably there wouldn't be enough of it, but there is a limit to how much can be produced. So what percentage of the potential world usage of fuel is likely to be produced in the form of HVO? It sounds like a fairly niche product at the moment, but it must have a limit to how much it can multiply. And of course, if everybody starts to use it, as been mentioned, then that will change the price. So it doesn't give us a feel for where this is in the world market of fuels. Is this something that we're taking advantage of, but actually 2 or 3 years down the road, it will, we won't be able to produce as much as anybody wants. Therefore, it won't be a potential fuel of the future. I don't have a feel for that from the paper, I'm afraid. So that would be helpful to know where this is going.
That's a very good point. There is no way to know how much the total supply could be, and this isn't a fuel of the future. This is purely a stepping stone to move on to other technologies. The best part of moving in now is we make best use of what we call UCO, used cooking oil, which is what all of our trial came from, used cooking oil, and it's a waste product, which in some countries just gets tipped down the drain. So we can actually reuse that, turn that into something that can be that has value. But yeah, I can't comment on the long-term viability of HVO, because there will become a tipping point when, if everybody starts using it, there may not be enough. But I'm not in a position to be able to address that. I'm sorry.
Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. I mean, it seems like a bit of a no-brainer to me. We're just trading off 8% carbon reduction for slightly increased costs. And I mean, as Councillor Criswell quite rightly said, if supply dries up, we can presumably just switch back to diesel. There's no negative there. I couldn't see anything in the report, and I might have totally dreamt it. Was there a need to purchase a bigger tank for the HVO at some point, or did I just imagine that entirely?
Okay, that's not in the report itself, but we are looking at potentially another tank in order to work collaboratively with the fire service and the police to be able to provide fuel for the blue light services. But that's not within the remit of this.
And what? I mean, I'm all for collaborating with the fire service, etc. I think it's brilliant. I presume that had a cost implication. And if so, was that borne by us or not?
No, we provide a 24-hour operation at Eastfield House anyway, with CCTV on site, so there was no cost borne by us. We just let them through the gate. They had a key for the fuel tank that recorded what they were.
Thank you, Councillor Tevlin.
Thank you. Just to echo Councillor Taylor's point, I also, as part of this committee, representing this committee, attended the East of England Ambulance Service, and I do think there is a need to push to partner with them. Following Councillor Criswell's point about the future, I know my school about 18 years ago was using vegetable oil for our minibus. So my thing is, with Huntingdonshire, using this as a trailblazing report to really push partnership working, whether that's with the schools and sixth forms and colleges here, and key partners like the Blue Light Services, and the CPCA. I think this should be brought to the attention of the CPCA to see what can be done in collaboration, yeah, that's what I would think should happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tevlin. Councillor Bywater.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, good report. I mean, I can't argue with anything that's been said, so really good. Just a declaration, I guess, is I'm a member of the Fire Authority, so I've heard the feedback whilst I've been on the Fire Authority, which is positive, so well done. I just want to pick up on 2 points, really. A word of caution: used cooking oil has been produced for a considerable time in my ward and has caused a huge amount of aggravation from odours. So just a word of caution, don't get too excited about it, because it causes lots of problems from smell on production. And the other point I want to pick up on is fuel usage. So you list on page 64, 49,000 litres used by HDC, 3,500 litres. The police service have only used 571 litres, which in my estimation, if it's a 60-litre fuel tank on a car, that's what 9 vehicles it's filled up. How keen are they in this journey? I'd just like to understand what their commitment is if it's only looking at 9 tanks of police cars, really.
The police were a little bit late to join the trial, but their vehicles are a lot smaller than the fire service and ours. We are very heavy fuel users in our HGVs, and it was for a limited number of vehicles. It wasn't for their whole fleet, so it was for there was only 2 vehicles that they sent over on a regular basis, just to trial it in those rather than trialing it in everything.
So given that they only send a couple of vehicles to fill up, are they actually keen to come on this journey with us, or do we need to lobby people like the Police and Crime Commission to say, look, this is working for us, are you coming on the journey? Is there something that can be done about that?
a little lobbying wouldn't hurt. So yeah, a little, yeah.
Yeah, Councillor Hunt.
I just wanted to come in just to ensure that I think the good points that Councillor Bywater's raised has been raised by multiple others about kind of reaching out with other partners. I'd like to move the recommendation that we recommend that Cabinet approaches the East of England Ambulance Trust to explore their interest in this and to reach out to stakeholders, including the Police and Crime Commissioner, to explore where existing partnerships can be strengthened.
Councillor Hassel.
Yeah, can I just clarify the recommendation? Whichever way you do it, I think it's a positive kind of thing. But in reaching out to other partners, is that because, for example, we can buy the fuel in bigger bulk so we get a better deal, as well as the, obviously, climate change, because ambulances and everything else are running.
So if I could explain my reasoning on that, I think that's the point about because of the ability to reduce carbon across multiple fleets is a positive there. And the report does mention the ability to buy at a fixed price, where if that is something which could be explored as a future partnership, if partners consider that to be beneficial. So that's the rationale of my recommendation.
Councillor Lowe, then Councillor Orban.
Thank you. With regards to the recommendations, could we also request the leader writes to, I think it's the Energy Secretary, about reducing the import tax on HVO?
Yeah.
Because that would help bring the price down a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Councillor Orban.
Yeah, absolutely happy with those. Again, just to re-emphasise my point about even if another organisation doesn't want to work with us directly, there's that experience that we've got here in this room and within the team that we're willing to share and help other organisations reduce their carbon footprint. I think going back to that working group that we were on the last meeting, this is an immediate win. I think technology is changing, and we don't need to hang about to wait for things to improve. I think this is more ethically acceptable than some of the concerns I have over over electric vehicles. I think this is an immediate win that can be used as a stepping stone.
So is everyone happy with that recommendation? Yes, I was going to move from that one then to the Councillor Hassel's one.
If you want to just sort of discuss them all, and then we'll take all three.
Okay. So Councillor Hassel, your recommendation earlier was that we approach the Cabinet or Section 151 officer to secure a cut-off price for when we stop using HVO and move back to diesel.
Yes, yes.
Can I just clarify with officers, with Colin, a fixed point on HVO, how would that work when the diesel market is fairly dynamic as well? There must be some ratio between those things. It may be a little bit of thinking about how we can work those two factors together might be needed rather than fixing a specific thing around HVO.
Yeah, I think the devil's in the detail when you're making recommendations, but obviously having a cut-off for HVO when the actual diesel price is higher. So I think it needs to be a percentage higher than the base diesel price.
That's fine. So happy to take that. I'm sure we can come up with some mathematics to work that through with our accountancy colleagues. Thank you.
So any other recommendations? Councillor Lowe.
Yeah, just to request that the leader writes to the Energy Secretary.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
I was going to say, should we start with that one then, as we've already jumped in? So if that is proposed by Councillor Lowe and seconded by Councillor Hunt, could I have a show of hands as to who would be in favour of that? That's all in favour. Fabulous, thank you. And then Councillor Hunt's suggestion, proposal.
I haven't got a seconder yet.
There we go, that's fine. And could I take a show of hands on Councillor Hunt's suggestion? Thank you. And then finally, Councillor Hassel's suggestion that we add a recommendation that there be a cut-off point put in place, and obviously the detail on that can be worked out afterwards.
I'm happy to second that.
You can second that
A
one.
show of
And
hands?
can we have a show of hands on that one if everyone's in favour of that one? Perfect, thank you very much.
Thank you. Has anyone got any more comments on this item? Councillor Shaw.
Sorry, this one just occurred to me. You mentioned that the trial involved recycled HVO. Is there any more plans to continue using recycled? Because obviously the report, there's a specific purchasable product that's mentioned in here. Is there plans to go forward with the recycling of HVO?
Yeah, the intention will be to use HVO solely from used cooking oil, which is the most environmentally friendly.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Hassel.
I mean, it's really just an open question. Is there anything that we can do as a council? It just seems to me that and Councillor Griswell's points were really well made, but if we could do something within this country in some way, and ideally within Huntingdonshire, in order to capture all this, that would be absolutely fantastic. And is there anything that we can do in order to facilitate, making this locally? Because obviously there's going to be a whole series of miles to get the stuff here and so on and so forth. So it would be fantastic if we could initiate something in this country and ideally in Huntingdonshire.
Yeah.
Just on that point, my suggestion would be a sort of cross-stakeholder working group with multiple partners from around Cambridgeshire, as previously suggested, like the CPCA and key business leaders in Huntingdonshire who might be of interest, to go forward with some sort of working steering group. Can I recommend it?
You're welcome to.
I'll recommend
Has
it.
anyone got a seconder? Councillor Hassel. Have a show of hands of that recommendation.
Sorry, any against?
Any abstention?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments before we move on? Councillor Taylor. Councillor Criswell, you want to go first?
Yeah, just to say that there is a real concern about food security.
Yes.
And if we're going to start growing crops for fuel, there's a conflict there. So we just need to be aware of that.
Councillor Lowe and then Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I was thinking of, obviously there are already lorries going around collecting used cooking oil. It might be worth getting hold of those companies to see if we can collaborate with them, because you've also got cooking oil which people throw down the drain, which is obviously causing a lot of issues for Anglian Water and Cambridge Water.
Really?
So, with the weekly food collection, if we had a big jam jar or something to collect weekly with people's used cooking oil, that could be another option. I know it's probably not going to create enough to run all the vehicles, but it will help.
It could be part of the food waste. Okay.
Thank you. Just to come in on that, I think just to exercise a slight note of caution over the reach and power of what the District Council can do with its powers, with the authority that we have to act, and also our resources as well. So I absolutely anticipate and recognise the support for this as technology. The reach that we have to be able to change market conditions in quite a complicated economic model, I suspect is somewhat limited. Yes. So I'm absolutely comfortable to take away the recommendation to look at how we could amplify that. But I draw you back to some of the tenets of the corporate plan around do, enable and influence. Perhaps some of this falls very firmly in that influence spectrum, and I suspect the degree to which officers can be tasked to make genuine impacts on this might be quite small. So happy to take away the recommendation to look at that, to think how we could work, definitely to amplify things through our partners, but just to put a slight note of caution over the reach and resources that the District Council has to impact on this area.
Councillor Taylor. Oh, Councillor Alban first.
That's fine. I was just going to finish off, but what I was going to say, we've just got to be careful as well, as in the name, hydro-treated. So it is treated, so we can't use vegetable oil straight from the cooking fat. I don't know whether we've got that structure anywhere in England to do that. So you know, we've got to be cautious of that as well. But I really do thank you for all the recommendations. I think that must be a record recommendations from the panel. But I will take that away, and absolutely, the officers will take it to cabinet. But officers will look at everything that you've talked about infrastructure-wise, and if it's possible to do anything within this country. So thank you.
Before we move on, just quickly, Councillor Orban.
Yeah, just quickly, I remember seeing on television some years ago, the London Borough of Bromley was going around with a council vehicle collecting up used cooking oil from takeaways, restaurants, to stop it going down. Now, I know an urban borough in London is a lot different to a rural authority, but unless it's already been done, can I suggest we don't reinvent the wheel? There's a local authority there we could approach and just gain their knowledge in the same spirit that we're seeking to share ours. And picking up on John's point, if we could have a report back to this panel just as to what the recommendations we've made, what the officer response is, and look what the officers feel is achievable, rather than just us make recommendations, we feel good about ourselves, it goes, and then nothing happens. I think it needs to come back so we can maybe reassess our expectations. Yes. and go again.
Agree. Thank you. And quickly, Councillor Hassel.
Yeah, just very quickly, just picking up on Councillor Lowe's, and we're about to discuss the capture of food waste. It may well be, the answer may well be that we capture a lot of vegetable oil and then we pass it on to a third party who we influence or sell things to, and it becomes another win-win. So if we can just kick that around, I think, as Councillor Alban has said, we don't have all the answers, but rather than hearing nothing, it would be good to get a report back to see what happens.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a brilliant report. Thank you. It's a real good news story. Thank you so much. Thank you, Councillor Taylor and Colin. So now moving on to item number 6, procurement of vehicles and containers for weekly food waste collection services. We've got Councillor Taylor and Heidi. Oh. Councillor Taylor, did you want to start?
Thank you, Chair. So we're going to talk about food waste. So we're looking at a weekly food waste collection. So HDC must start a weekly food waste collection service for households by the end of March 2026. And I think we shouldn't be surprised how quick this will come around. It's not optional, it is a legal requirement set by the government, UK government, that all councils in England must follow. The new service is part of a nationwide changes to improve the waste management and the recycling. To prepare for the mandatory change, HGC has received capital funding, and that's all in the report from DEFRA, to buy necessary equipment like food waste trucks and bins. We couldn't bring a truck along. It's important to understand that this new food waste collection service will go ahead regardless of any local government changes or restructures that obviously we know that's happening. The law requires it to happen, so HTC is taking steps now to make sure we're ready on time. Thank you, Chair.
Heidi, did you want to add anything? Or?
Middle button. Thank you. I don't think there's much else to add. Just to reiterate that we are mandated to do this, but so are many other authorities as well. So there are other authorities out there seeking to purchase the vehicles and the caddies. So we just want to get ahead as much as we can to ensure that we've got the vehicles and the caddies in place so that we can implement this service by the date that's been set for us. And just, yeah, to explain what I've got. So this is just examples of the caddies that we'll be delivering to householders. So we've got this caddy here, 23-litre caddy. That's what residents will put out for collection by the crews. And then we've got a 7-litre caddy that will be given to residents to have in their kitchens or utility rooms so that they can capture the food waste prior to putting it into these curbside caddies. This is just an example of size. The colours we're aiming for is silver. So that's silver across the Recap partnership, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough as well. So we're trying to keep it all the same across the board.
I do believe that's lockable, isn't it? So
Yeah.
when that's up.
Thank you. While we're passing them around, has anyone got any questions or comments they'd like to make? Councillor Bywater.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, really well-written report, to be fair, and the briefing that we had for members the other night,
Brilliant.
you know, really helped my understanding of it, so thank you. Just a couple of points I really want to pick up on is, you know, you've given an idea of costs for these 12-ton collection vehicles. Are we confident that, you know, because obviously everybody's going to be pushing to buy these vehicles and, you know, we have a supply and demand and everybody's trying to buy these vehicles, they can only make so many per year. I can imagine there's going to be lots of people trying to get their hands on them. Are we comfortable with that price? Because obviously we've got a limited budget. And my second question is these things, that one particularly, if the rest of Huntingdonshire is like my close on bin collection day, trying to find my bin in the resident street, how confident are we that we're not going to be having these things all over the place and them all going AWOL? You know, is there sort of some contingency plan on that? Thank you.
What's written in the report is based on the now. Obviously, the longer we leave it, prices are going to increase. And that's why we're really trying to get ahead of the game so that we can get those vehicles purchased. Obviously, it's going to be a supply and demand sort of thing, and we possibly will see the prices increase. Yeah, with regard, I guess, as with your usual bins, they are the responsibility of the residents to ensure that they're set out and brought back as soon after collection as possible. So, yeah, we will work with our crews to make sure that they're putting the bins back.
That is the process that will go through procurement anyway. So hopefully they will strike a good deal through the procurement route. And yeah, but I don't want to say fingers crossed to make sure that we've got that supply, but it's certainly, that's why we're exploring it now and getting on with it.
Just quickly, yeah, absolutely get that. I think it's important that we get assurances that the procurement process isn't too clunky. You know, we get on with it because, you know, it will cost us if we're delaying ourselves through that procurement process. I know we've got rules and regulations to follow, but we need to be on it, really.
Yeah, John.
So that's absolutely right. And just to give members some reassurance around that, the council has a dedicated procurement team who lead on that activity, who are commercially aware, will guide us through the legislation quickly and efficiently. That team's already engaged on this activity and project. So we are lined up, ready to go to get on with that procurement activity. So give you some reassurance around that.
Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. And I think it's really positive to see the work that HCC has done on this. Like you've mentioned, Councillor Taylor, this is legal requirement. It's kind of, we have to do this. I'm really pleased by the work that we're seeing from waste minimisation, for procurement, are going to be doing it across HCC. So it's brilliant, getting out the gate early. I do still have some serious concerns, though, about some elements still from central government. So we've obviously it's been announced that we will receive this 1.8 million in capital funding, but DEFRA has still not confirmed firm figures for ongoing revenue funding, which we realistically need to plan an ongoing service, which is going to place an additional cost burden on this council. And it's the previous government had years to do this. The current government have had over 6 months in office to do so, and we're still waiting on those figures. So I would ask to kind of settle some ease in my head, please. Do we have an estimate of the revenue costs that the food waste service will require, and what engagement has been done with DEFRA to try and get a revenue funding figure out of them?
we haven't compiled all the figures as yet, if I'm dead honest, when it comes to the ongoing cost of this. This is still at the initial stages. We need to get the service up and running. That's what we've got the capital cost fund for. The capital cost for. The engagement is ongoing with DEFRA, and I think we're just dead keen to learn more, but we're just not at that stage yet.
So an additional point there as well is a conversation with Andy Rogan, who runs the service area, does have a regular contact with people in DEFRA. So we are talking to the ministry actively around that. Across Cambridgeshire, that's also happening. And as you would imagine, the Local Government Association is also pushing hard. So all the right people are asking all the right questions. We just need those numbers back from government.
Thank you, Chair. So we are obviously in a partnership with RECAP as well. So we have regular conversations with county and all the other districts regarding this and many other things to do with waste. So, you know, we work as a partnership. I know, although I just said, this will come round soon, we still have got, another a year and a bit. So that burden funding, I'm hoping we're going to hear soon about that.
Councillor McAdam.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a bit of an academic question, really. I'm just curious about beyond the collection of the food waste, and I read that it's broken down anaerobically. Does this actually produce any product which is of any use in any way? Thank you.
Maybe I should have done a lot more research on anaerobic digestion, but yeah, there is a product at the end, and you've got some energy generation as well from the product. It is the best way to process food as well. It's better than in-vessel composting or any form of composting. So it's the best form and more environmentally friendly form of composting food waste.
Yeah, alongside that, you get a jest. I think it's called a jestite. So that is either in a liquid form, which then goes to the farmers, and it's spread. They can take it away in trucks, and it's spread on their land for fertilizer. So there's kind of two products that come out at the end of it. Yeah. So it's good, but what we've got to remember is that we don't want to waste the food in the first place, and that's the top of the hierarchy of the waste triangle. Let's try not to waste the food to start with. It saves on money, and it saves on the whole environmental thing. So thank you.
Thank you. A couple of questions. So I think with the gear up to 2026, an effective comms strategy to engage with residents as to not confuse them and to prepare them, I think it would be appropriate, and it'd be good to see that sort of come through. The other question is just a more of a practical thing. In terms of household waste and the black bins that we have at the moment, would that affect those bins in terms of being collected and how often they would get collected, or would they not be? Will we lose our black bins? And also, again, sorry, this is just a very simple practical question. Would you be able to use bin bags in those bins or not? Thank you.
So with regards to your refuse bin, obviously what we'd like to see is a reduction in the amount of waste that's going in there, and hopefully by having a weekly food waste collection, that enables residents to move their food waste over so it can be processed. There are no plans to reduce the frequency of collections or the size of bins for the refuse. Obviously that's a different decision. Second question, sorry.
It was just the practical element of, could you use like a bin liner? Because I could, it might get a bit messy.
Well, the preferred is that you put everything in there as organic as possible, so no liner at all. If you did wish to line, then paper or kitchen roll or something like that, something that's a bit more natural, very similar to your garden bin. So it's going to go off and go through the composting process, so no plastics or anything like that.
So again, re-emphasising the point, I think comms around this will be really important. Thank you.
Councillor Hunt?
Thank you. I'm going to come in on a slightly more positive point than my previous one. So on the caddies themselves, we're obviously going to have to go procure 90,000 of these. That's quite a large number. Is there an effort being made to buy British or to buy ethical?
Yes, so yeah, we are hoping to go with British-made caddies, 100% recyclable, and also they employ local people and so on. So that's the aim, very much so.
Councillor Orban?
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions, if I may, do them one at a time. The money on page 122. It says the costs are sorry, I've moved on. 1816385, and we're getting funding of 1802468, which I think leaves a shortfall of just under 14,000. Where will that money come from, please?
These are indicative costs at the moment, so we will try and sort of work towards what funding we have been provided with. I can't answer the rest, sorry.
I'm concerned that, again, it sort of goes back to the last point. We've got the good intentions. We're trying to get ahead of the game. We're trying to make progress, but there's a £14,000 potential. I know they're indicative costs, but what happens if the grant that we get doesn't cover the spend we're committed to? Or is that a political question?
I'm coming on that one as well. So I think you're right. What we've got in here is some indicative costs for market testing. So the market will be changing and we'll be going through that and going through that procurement perspective. So how we build our specification, the cost levels we set around our unit costs will be set within that. The risk on shortfall is a real one though. So I think the way that will be treated would be by going back to DEFRA, seeking further assurance and funding from them. I can't speak on behalf of the government to say what they would do, but I think our treatment of risk would be to re-engage back with DEFRA to seek any additional funds that we needed from them rather than the local taxpayer bearing it. It's a tricky one to answer, but at the moment we're at that point where we've got a grant, government's done the numbers, crunched it and turned it out. We would do all we can to work within that grant funding envelope.
On that point then, Chair, before I go on to my other questions, can I make a recommendation that if there is a shortfall, that it comes back to us and the other panel in terms of the financial liability. My second question is about drivers. I can't find it in here, but I think there's a figure of 27 needing to recruit 27 drivers. Is that correct? Or additional drivers? Did I imagine that?
Well, we were looking at additional of 10 lorries.
So if are we looking at additional drivers as well to, okay, so my question is on that, bearing in mind the current economic climate, are we looking at employing qualified HGV drivers, or will we be looking at a mixture of that and drivers that would then train up?
It would be a mixture of that. So we already train up some of our own staff to become HGV drivers. So that opportunity is already there for anybody who would like to take that up. And yeah, we will need to employ new drivers for the service.
So I'm just concerned again for protecting us as a district council. I know this came up before years ago when the A14 was being built, that we were training drivers up, getting them HGV qualified, and they were clearing off and earning more money building the A14. I'm just protecting ours and the residents' money in terms of what we're investing in training. So I'm looking for reassurance that there will be that protection there for the council, for any drivers we train up.
I'll have to take that back to Andy Rogan as the head of operations. But yeah, we can get some better answer for that.
Thank you, Chair. And then my last question on the bulk bins. This is probably something that is already considered anyway, but in flats, if we're putting food waste into bulk bins, I'm concerned about the summer months, residue that's left behind, particularly as Councillor Tevin made about linings. Even if residents don't wanted to, that you can't put a liner, as far as I know, in a bin that big. People putting the wrong kind of stuff into big bins. What's the responsibility then if there's a block of flats, someone dumps something in there that shouldn't be there? Whose responsibility is that to clear out as people get educated and there's going to be problems? What do we do to combat that, please?
Yeah, so it will follow the same sort of lines as it does. So communal bins. So we already have refuse communal bins and dry recycling communal bins out there. And the Waste Min team and the waste managers work really closely with property management companies and residents associations, and we highlight if there has been any issues there. And we've got this good relationship now, whereas they will arrange for bins to be emptied or for contamination to be removed, or we can do that on their behalf. But just keeping that communication going between the resident associations, and if any additional communication with residents as well, to increase that knowledge. So it's just continue to work with them and ensuring that communication is in place.
Chair, thank you. Can I thank Heidi for answering my questions over the top of a bin that's I've inadvertently left.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. I've got two questions because Councillor Arbon got in there before me on the flats. So 90,000 bins, I don't know how many properties we have in Huntingdonshire. Is it about the 80,000 mark, is it? So presumably the 90,000 would cover the anticipated growth in the area. Lovely. The other question I have is on, well, page 117. I know we're not the Waste Disposal Authority, but it mentions that the County Council have a contract in place until 2027, which is just a period of 12 months after we initiate that. Do we know if there's negotiations on a new contract? I'm just thinking if that contract ends, there might be increased costs, or there might not even be a disposal facility. I just wondered if there was any negotiations or movement in that area.
Yeah, I believe there are. As you've already mentioned, it's Cambridgeshire County Council's contract. We are just the collection authority. So it is Cambridgeshire County Council to ensure there is a place for disposal, as with any of their other contracts. So as I understand it, they are obviously working towards what happens after 2027.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Chair. I just want to add to that. As I said before, we work closely as a recap partnership with county and districts and Peterborough as well, Cambridge City. So we all are in conversations about contracts, but obviously CCC are the disposal authority.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe.
Thank you. I was just wondering, with regards to the larger caddy, is there going to be assisted or assistance for that for those that can't carry them? And
yeah, of course. So we already have that in place for the other bins. So any residents that have an assisted collection in place when we start this service will continue to for all of their bins. So yeah, that will be still in place.
Thank you. And one other question. If we didn't charge for the green bin waste, would we still be compliant with the non-statutory guidance under the simpler recycling proposals?
To a point, yes. But what we have to offer is a weekly food waste collection. So you would still have to ensure provisions were in place to ensure we can collect this on a weekly basis. I think the other thing which has already been mentioned is about what happens to the food waste afterwards. If it continues to go with garden waste, it will go through an invest or composting process. by collecting food waste separately, it can go through anaerobic digestion, which is a lot more better for the environment than through the composting process. So this is better that way.
Councillor Criswell?
Yes, thank you. I was rather alarmed to hear that we don't have an idea of what the revenue cost is of this running this service. We've been running a waste service since time immemorial, so if anybody's going to be able to calculate what the cost is going to be, I would have thought it would be HDC. And surely we need to be giving evidence to DEFRA what this is going to cost, rather than waiting to see what handout we get. So, I'm just concerned if we haven't worked out yet what the cost is going to be, we should have done.
Councillor Taylor.
I'm not privy to it, but I would imagine in the background this has been worked out. We go through a company, is that correct, Heidi, that look at all our rounds and make sure that they are efficient, the way that we pick up our bins, but I cannot imagine that we do not know what this is going to cost. We will speak to Andy, and if we don't know at this moment, we certainly will, because you are correct that we will need to, put this through for our burden funding.
Has anyone got any other questions or comments on this item? Councillor Hassel.
Yeah, just an observation from the previous item. If we've got 90,000 bins and we each use, say, half a litre of oil, vegetable oil per week, that's like 45,000 litres of collectible vegetable oil. I just kind of throw that out there as quite a powerful thing that would run quite a few, or possibly even run our fleet of HGVs. The other question, going back to green bins, is when I was leading the project for green bins, one of the issues around the black bin was, putting food waste and things like that into black bins is that whole process requires a certain amount of organic matter in order for it to work. So if we're taking food waste out of the black bins, because that's where it's going at the moment, is there any danger to the black bin process?
Sorry. Obviously, it changes the makeup of our waste. I think what we've got to remember from this is that we are mandated to introduce a weekly food waste collection and do the right thing with it. So the makeup of waste across the whole of England is going to change. So the way your black bin waste is processed will change because the makeup isn't going to be different going forward.
Councillor Taylor.
I think you've got to understand that the food waste that is going into the grey bin now will end up probably pretty much in landfill, and that's not what we want. So the weekly food waste collection will be going to AD, which, as we've said earlier, is a much better process. So it's something that we don't want that food waste going into the grey bin. And as I said before, actually, if we can stop wasting it, that's even better.
Yeah, if we can just come back. So I think what I'm hearing is the process will change. We don't know exactly how it's going to happen. I just wanted to come back as well because I think Councillor Criswell's point was really well made, and I think that potentially we should. I don't know whether Councillor Criswell wants to make that as a recommendation, because I think it's important for Cabinet that they do know, what the running costs of this is.
Councillor Bywater.
Yeah, I was just off record. I was just speaking to Steve about that actually, because I think it's important. If the portfolio holder hasn't got an idea of the numbers, then how much is it going to cost to empty 80,000 bins each week? What the staffing costs for that? What are the financial implications of that? Really, there's nothing in the report, and this is going to Cabinet, so I think someone needs to see those provisional numbers. And I know the calculations for what we're buying are estimates, you know, we need to see some estimates on the staffing costs and the running costs, really.
So would someone like to second that? Oh, Councillor Taylor first.
Yeah, absolutely have no worries about you making that recommendation. But I would say that this would be something that should be coming back to overview and scrutiny. I may be wrong, but I would like to see this come back to overview and scrutiny to look at the revenue cost. So absolutely make that recommendation, but I cannot imagine it not coming back to overview and scrutiny as another paper.
So yeah, I'm happy to put that as a recommendation with a caveat that it comes back in the next meeting or
Yeah.
when you Chair see fit for it to come, but sooner rather than later.
Yeah, just to come back on that. So I think we're happy to take away the action to come back on those revenue costs and to work through those models. I think, as we said, we've already mapped out the frequency, the collection rates, also the number of vehicles that are involved to work out the manpower and resources that sit alongside that. I'm sure we can come back to you on that. I would point out that we are already, 12 months away at least from delivering this policy. So an immediate, speedy, super quick response. We'll come back, but I think give us a little bit of space to come back on some of those numbers. I think might be reasonable for us in terms of officers. The revenue commitment will be funded from government, make that point through. So we will work our way through on that. So I think happy to come back on it. I think to get something back as a written paper for the next committee might push us just a little too hard.
Councillor Criswell?
Yeah, thank you. Despite John's reassurances, I'm not confident the government will cover all that revenue cost. They've said they will pay us, but it remains to be seen whether it is that whole cost. So, you know, I think we just need to be monitoring this so we know what the cost is going to be.
I agree.
So the sooner we could get it back, the better, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hassel?
Yeah, just picking up on John's point there, I sort of agree with all the officers' time, etc., etc. But you know, if DEFRA come back and say, "Oh, so how much do you want?" You've got to have something in your back pocket. And to be at this point without that, I think it's really important because they're the ones who are going to pay for it. So I think it's perhaps a little bit more important than waiting.
Yes. Councillor Orban?
Thank you, Chair. There was my proposal earlier on about the funding and Councillor Bywaters. Perhaps we can combine the two and get a realistic timescale from John when the officers, when we could realistically expect a report to come back, to pick up Councillor Hassel's point, because I'm anxious as backbenchers, we see things in a different way than the Cabinet does, and it's our role, as we know, to scrutinise things, and I want to scrutinise things as early as possible and as thoroughly as possible, but not if that's unrealistic. So I'd like to get a timescale, and then we can get perhaps a composite recommendation that we can agree on. Crumbs composite, that's right back to the 70s, isn't it?
So just to clarify, would you be happy with one recommendation which you would propose to say that you would like to see some costings and further detail at a future meeting in the near future of revenue and capital costs? Would that be your proposal?
Yeah.
As soon as practically possible, really. I appreciate the pressures on officers and all that, but I guess there is an element of urgency in it, really, given the time constraints.
Okay.
If I may, Chair, capital cost is pretty much this paper. So we're looking at, this is the funding. We've got 1.8 million for this. So the recommendation you're talking about is revenue and ongoing costs to produce that weekly collection.
So, show of hands for that recommendation.
Could we have
Oh,
second?
second. Oh, I thought we had Councillor Criswell.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Show of hands for that recommendation.
That's
Is
easy.
everybody?
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Any other comments or questions on this item? Councillor Hunt.
I would just like to, following my comments at the start, I do appreciate all the very good engagement that's going on between HDC and DEFRA currently, but I would like to move a recommendation that a relevant member of the Cabinet writes to the DEFRA Secretary to urge them to confirm revenue funding as soon as practicable.
I'm happy to second that. Yeah. Show of hands. Any other questions or comments on this paper? Councillor McAdam.
Yeah, just looking forward before it's actually implemented. Obviously, you know, it needs a buy-in from our residents. So, what's the plan for actually getting the message out there so everybody is very clear on what we're doing?
So we're at the early stages of bringing together a project team very similar to what we had for the garden waste project, ensuring that all key stakeholders are involved. Communication-wide, we'll do an extensive communication plan, engaging with all residents as well as parish councils and members to help spread that message. And again, we'll try and do that across a number of different media as well, to try and ensure that we capture as many residents as possible. All caddies will be delivered to everybody's front door, and as part of that package we'll include the leaflets and any relevant information as well to ensure that everybody's got all of that information as a pack when they receive their caddies.
Councillor Taylor.
I don't know whether it's actually my remit to do it, but I would like to make a recommendation. Would it be something that the panel would be interested in, as we did with civil parking enforcement, where we got a small working group together and with George and Jasmine, and I think maybe Claire was there as well, they spoke about the comms and what sort of comms plan would you think would be good for your residents? Entirely up to you as a panel, whether you think that might be something that you'd like to do.
I'd like to move what Councillor Taylor said.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Have we got a show of hands for that as well? I'd second it, and then show of hands. And again, anyone who is interested in being that working group, can you let Becky know? Any other comments or questions on this paper? In that case, I'd like to thank Councillor Taylor and Heidi for their time and their answering the questions, and thank everyone for their input and questions. It's brilliant. Thank you so much, and have a lovely evening.